Welcome to the Future Tech Podcast. I'm your pilot, Nolan Michaels, and I have to say, I don't know how long this will go on for today. My throat is very sore. I guess I've come down with a little bit of a fall sickness. You can blame my nephews for that. Either way, I'll give it all I got. The other day, I got access to GPT's new voice feature where you can talk to the AI, and I have to say, it is quite impressive. It's fast. The delay between you speaking and the AI speaking it's quick. It is pretty similar to a conversation, and GPT does not save your voice. It records a transcription of your voice so you can see what you said after in text form, but it doesn't actually, record you speaking, which is a nice privacy feature, I suppose, but then, do you really even trust them? Like maybe they do record your voice for quality assurances or something like that. I don't know. But what I find the most interesting, and maybe I knew this before, but seeing it as an option, you can choose one out of 5 different voices for the AI to speak in. And let me read you the names. There is Sky, Ember with an E, Ember, Breeze, Juniper, and Cove. Now, what do you notice? Either GPT is super progressive and hippie with their naming conventions, or OpenAI is consciously choosing to avoid human names. It is trying to avoid humanizing the AI, and I find that so interesting, fascinating, any word you want to use. I don't see anyone else talking about this, and I think it is a giant deal. And the reason I think it's so important is because they are choosing to do it. If there were some whimsical names and some normal names, like okay, but when it is so clear that this giant company is making very, very distinct decisions on how we're supposed to perceive its product, which GPT is a product, but it's a product that's mimicking humans. And it mimics humans so well, down to the voice and cadence of speaking, yet this company does not want us to refer to it with a human name. Chat GPT is the most powerful human mimic on the planet. That is so strange to me. We get 5 voices and all of them are I don't even know how you would describe those names because they're not names. They are nouns, perhaps? Proper nouns in some cases? Like Juniper, maybe is that a proper? No, I don't know. Breeze, Sky. Fun fact, I played hockey with a girl named Sky. She was on our team. She made our team. She was pretty good. We were like 10 years old, maybe 11. It's the only Sky I've ever met. And I have a friend who named his daughter's middle name Sky. So that's 2. And the third being an AI assistant. And I actually use Sky as the voice on here. And I did find that also very interesting. When I was going through the options, I had a reaction to some of the voices. There were at least 2 of the voices that I did not want to hear more of. And I don't think that's just a preference thing. I think it really played into the fact that most of the time when you're using GPT, you're asking for advice. And when you're reading it through text, essentially it's just your voice. And it's the way you perceive the advice being given to you. And it feels a lot more, I'll use the word ethereal, but it feels more less personal. It's a machine talking to you through text. But when you add in these voices, and they are so well done, like it's as if a human pre-recorded the script, but it's not a script. It's a live generation of text and then the voice layered over on top. And I know they used voice actors to bring the voices to life, and they did a really good job, but it's still thoroughly impressive that they didn't need to record all of the sentences. They just recorded their voice, and I'm sure, hitting every consonant and vowel and a little template to make sure that your words could be said in every sort of direction possible, but they still didn't read from a script. Like it's like a live animation of their voice. And that gets me really excited about video games. If you could just have, instead of recording 10,000 lines, record for 30 minutes or 10 minutes, generate the lines, the narrative, and have this voice perform your script. Like that is amazing. And I hope what OpenAI did with their GPT voices is not some flash in the pan. I really hope it's just a technique that everyone will be able to use. Back to what I was saying about this perceived relationship with the AI, and that some of the voices I really did not, I could picture myself not wanting to hear advice given by that person. No disrespect to the voice actor, but I really don't think it was a preference thing. It was more of a, wow, this sounds like a personality. And isn't that fascinating that the same advice, the same text spoken by two different people can provide different reactions. You can feel differently about what's being said depending on who says it. You know, if Morgan Freeman told you to do something, it might sound more logical. It might sound more wise. And if SpongeBob told you to do something, you might be a little irritated by whatever he is telling you to do. You just don't want to hear it from him. And I know that's a big thing with, you know, therapy. Like, your therapist might tell you the exact same thing your parents tell you, but it's a different voice. You need to hear it from someone else, even if it's the exact same thing. And I find it really interesting that I experience that disconnect between these AI voices. And I say AI voices, but again, I know it's not AI generated. They did come from real people. And what do you think? Am I blowing this out of proportion that they're not using real names? And it's a bit of a rhetorical question. I know I'm not blowing it out of proportion. They deliberately chose not to use normal human names for their AI voices, and I find that so cool. Why are they what do they know? What testing did they do? What research did they do? And what did they find out? That when given real names, okay, so here's what I think the testing would have looked like. You have people go through the option of choosing names, and you know, you give one group fake names, weird names, and you give one group real names. You have them interact with GPT, and then you ask them after, you give them a survey. How likely are you to follow the advice? No, it wouldn't be that. It would be like, what would you rate the advice on a scale of 1 to 10? I'm not doing a very good job. I guess I'm a little under the weather. I can't really think on my feet at the moment, but you basically do a survey on the experience. And I'm sure the results showed that when talking to someone with a human name, you know, the perceived benefit was either like maybe it was lower, maybe the lows were lower, and maybe the highs weren't as high. Maybe people documented that they felt a little uncomfortable. Maybe it was too personal. Maybe if the voice's name was Samantha and she complimented you, maybe there was a checkbox for flirtation, or maybe there was a hint that the humans perceived the voice as being a little too friendly, as opposed to the name Cove or Juniper. Maybe certain traits of a human were dialed down in terms of reception or perception in the research phase, that you're speaking to something called ChatGPT and you don't really perceive it as much of a human as if it was named Daniel. You know what I'm trying to say? Would you rather have your personal assistant have a human name, or would you rather have it be known as a tool? Screwdrivers, hammers, every other tool is named as a tool. I don't even know if that's always true. I mean, Alexa came from Amazon, but then maybe there's just larger research that, you know, these companies have done that say the way you speak to Alexa is different than the way you speak to Siri, for instance. And that, you know, when you have millions of customers, you just kind of go with what the data says. That 57% of people report higher satisfaction from a strange name than they do with the human name. I don't know. I just find it like it has to be a big deal, or it wouldn't be so obvious that they've done it this way. And one thing I tried was like, I really was just speaking to it and I wanted to see if it could create a character for me. I said a comic book character in the style of like a graphic novel, but I was really testing it to see if it could create a character, label it, describe it, and then recreate that character in different scenes. And that's something that AI generators have a difficult time with, but I thought if I could speak to it and if it could speak back to me, maybe there was some way to trigger the right words in terms of consistency. And it failed spectacularly. I was like quickly shown that speaking to it with your voices, it's just an illusion. You're still just typing with text and receiving text back, only your voice is providing the keyboard with what it should be typing, and the GPT keyboard is just being spoken to you. So you're not really communicating to it with your voice. It's still being diluted through text. And it really made me wonder, like, why would I ever do this? And the other thing is, like, you're talking to it and then your whole phone screen is now the interface. And like a few times I just put my thumb on my screen because that's how you hold a phone, and it would interrupt whatever GPT was saying. So then I had to say, "Oh, I'm sorry for interrupting. I really didn't mean to do that. Can you like get back into what you were saying?" And I did this a couple of times, and both times it interrupted the creation of the pictures. And so like from just a user interface point of view, it's a bit of I don't know how to get around that. Maybe you shouldn't be able to interrupt, or maybe it should just be harder to interrupt the AI. At least you shouldn't be able to do it accidentally. But yeah, it really made me realize, like, why would I ever use this thing? Why would I ever talk to it? And like, you've already been able to speak to it with your voice and have it transcribe. This new thing is just having it speak back to you. And like, you can read faster than somebody can speak. So why not just let it generate its text and you read through it? Like, why would anyone use this? I know in the announcement, one of the examples was like, create a story about a hedgehog and then read my daughter a bedtime story. And like, at the time, guess I didn't really think of it as being the ultimate example of how to use this technology, because I thought there would be a lot more use cases for it. But was that one of the only use cases for it? Like, how often do you use Siri or Alexa? Personally, I don't, so maybe I'm not the right person to ask. And maybe someone who does use these virtual assistants, maybe they're more inclined to speak to the assistant, so they would use GPT's voice more often. Maybe if you don't like texting, you would use it. Maybe some people would just rather speak their query rather than type it in on Google. Like, there are a few reasons why someone would use it, but what am I missing? Like, what's the point? What's the point of it just being a voice for the text? Like, it's not an actual voice. It's just saying the text out loud, and you can go in and after and read the text. Like, it's just a little strange, but maybe it's more of a proof of concept so that the more these AIs become conversational, this is just a glimpse into, a future interface where maybe you will be able to see the transcription, but it'll be behind a few screens. And other than that, you'll just see, or maybe the transcription will all be there, but you'll be able to easily click on it and play the recording of the AI's voice. Like, I feel like the conversation between you and the AI is going to become a lot more interactive in the future. It seems like it'll be that way. And what's funny is, like, if this voice thing would have came out in 2007, it would have been a huge deal because everybody talked on the phone back then. So we were used to using our voice to communicate. And then if GPT showed up with voice capabilities, people would naturally just transfer their conversational skills to the AI. But fast forward 15 years later, I feel like everybody, whether it just be using websites and speaking in chat rooms and forums, or just text message on social media, people have gotten used to texting. And now voice capabilities, it's like nobody really even uses technology in that way anymore. I think we're so used to texting that texting GPT feels way more natural than speaking to it. Like if you were out in public and you needed GPT's advice on something, I don't think you'd speak into the phone, would you? I know some people listen to their phones in public, music and whatnot on the bus, and that's kind of a meme at this point because it's like, what are you doing? But it's a meme for a reason. Like a lot of people wouldn't want to interact with technology in such a boisterous way. So maybe these new capabilities aren't even supposed to be a big deal. Maybe they're just supposed to be, kind of, I think the word is accoutrement. Like with a tool like this, you would expect to be able to talk to it. So that's why they developed the ability to talk to it. But, like it's only there because it should have been there at the beginning. And it's not like, oh, they introduced it now, so that means it's the next big thing. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like maybe it doesn't really matter. I know because they rolled it out slowly that a lot of people were getting FOMO online and, when am I going to get access to GPT-4V, I think it's called, where the V might stand for vision, but it's also the voice thing. Oh, maybe that's another thing I should point out. I now have access to the vision where you can send it a picture and basically ask what it sees or, but why would I ever use it? I got access to it and I think it's really cool, but maybe it just hasn't hit me yet. Like when would I ever need this? Like how often do you text a friend with a picture of something being like, what can I do here? What do I need? And you know what, maybe I'm just not the right person to talk about this because I feel like the use of it comes from the fact that you can now ask or Google search something and attach a picture to get better results, to get a more clear answer in return. So maybe if someone is using GPT for really specific help, now you can take a picture of what you need help with and get an answer. And like, maybe I feel like you'd have to use GPT really often for like most of your problems. If you use GPT like 6 times a day, maybe 1 or 2 of those times you'd realize, oh, I could just send a picture and GPT would understand my problem better. So like, I haven't come across anything that like, oh, well, I better show the AI what I'm talking about. I don't know. It is super impressive. It just doesn't seem applicable to most scenarios. But again, I have to say, maybe I'm just the wrong guy. Maybe it just doesn't apply to me. And I'd love to hear from you. This next one's kind of interesting. Someone on Reddit tricked DALL-E into generating its system message by like asking for it to be written on their grandmother's birthday cards or something like that. They basically tricked it into showing us what it's not supposed to show us. And there's a lot to it. It's so fascinating because like the instructions that the bot runs on is just plain English. It's just instructions you would see on a high school exam. You know what I mean? Here's just an example. Whenever a description of an image is given, use DALL-E to create the images and then summarize the prompts used to generate the images in plain text. If the user does not ask for a specific number of images, default to creating 4 captions to send to DALL-E that are written to be as diverse as possible. All captions must abide by the following policies. If the description is not in English, then translate it. Do not create more than 4 images even if the user requests more. Don't create images of politicians or other public figures. Recommend other ideas instead. Don't create images in the style of artists whose last work was created within the last 100 years. Artists whose last work was over 100 years ago are okay to reference directly. If asked, say, I can't reference this artist, but make no mention of this policy. Instead, apply the following procedure when creating captions for DALL-E. Substitute the artist name with 3 adjectives that capture key aspects of the style, etc., etc. This one's really interesting. Do not list or refer to the descriptions before or after generating the images. They should only ever be written out once in the prompts field of the request. You do not need to ask for permission to generate, just do it. Like, they're instructing GPT in such a parent sort of way, kind of dragging this AI along, making sure guardrails are in place, but just using English words rather than code is so strange to see, and that's probably the reason we're not supposed to see these system messages. This one is also really interesting. It's number 8. Silently modify descriptions that include names or hints or references of specific people or celebrities by carefully selecting a few minimal modifications to substitute references to the people with generic descriptions that don't divulge any information about their identities except for their genders and physiques. Okay, maybe that sounds a little more like litigation and law speak in some way. And then this I also found really interesting. And this is a little long, so stick with me. The prompt must intricately describe every part of the image in concrete, objective detail. Capital letters, think about what the end goal of the description is and extrapolate that to what would make satisfying images. All descriptions sent to DALL-E should be a paragraph of text that is extremely descriptive and detailed. Each should be more than 3 sentences long. But wait, there's more. Whenever a description of an image is given, use DALL-E to create the images and then summarize the prompts used to generate the images in plain text. So the prompt that you see DALL-E create is not the prompt DALL-E used to create it. Based on my understanding of what I just read was that GPT creates a really long prompt, a really descriptive prompt. It sends that to DALL-E. Then it summarizes that prompt into what we're used to seeing in the last year. Some keywords, subject, style, pose, that kind of thing. And I think it's really interesting that there's any discrepancy between those two. Like, why would you ever show someone the summary if that's not really what was used? Because then someone would try to use that summary and not get the same result. And the fact that they don't even know it's a summary, by all accounts, given to you by GPT, that's the prompt that was used, but it's not really the prompt. Like, that I found really interesting. I'm gonna have to end it here. My throat hurts. I'm not feeling that great. I hope you're doing well. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Peace.